The Rambam writes in Hilchos Tamidin Umusafim, in the laws of Karbanos, the Sefras HaOmer Bizman Hazeh Ki Min HaTorah. The Rambam paskins that Sefras HaOmer, even in our day, is Min HaTorah. It's clear that Sefras HaOmer is a mitzvah Min HaTorah. It's a pasuk in Parshas Emor, Svarta Machem Macharas HaShabbos. There's no doubt about Sefras HaOmer is a biblical mitzvah. At one point, the shaila is post-temple that we no longer have a Beis HaMikdash, and we no longer bring the Karban Omer, so the Sefras HaOmer retain its biblical character and still remain a mitzvah min HaTorah, or the Sefras HaOmer is man hazeh, only a mitzvah midrabanan. So the Rambam paskins that even bisman hazeh, Sefras HaOmer is a mitzvah min HaTorah. And the question is, at first glance, it seems to be against the Gemara in Menachos. The Gemara in Menachos on Daf Samach Vav Amud Aleph points out, Ameimar mani yomei velo mani shvuei. Ameimar counted days and not weeks. He said it's a Zeicher L'Mikdash. He said since it's a Machokis in the Gemara, but the other opinion is that you count days and weeks. Amemar says you only count days and not weeks because it's only a Zeicher L'Mikdash. So Pashas, the way Rov Rishonim were in the Gemara, everybody agrees Bisman Hazeh, counting Sefras HaOmer is only a Zeicher L'Mikdash, it's only a mitzvah midrabanan. The Machokis is on a drabanan level, how much of a Zeicher do you need? Is it enough just to mention Yomim, days? Or no, you have to mention days and weeks. That's how Rov Rishonim were in the Gemara. Obviously the Rambam can't learn the Gemara that way because the Rambam paskins it's deraisa. So perhaps the Rambam learns the Gemara. No, that's Gufa is the Machokis in the Gemara. But according to Ameimar, you only count days and not weeks. So he holds Sefras HaOmer is only D'Rabbanan today. But according to the opinion that says you count days and weeks, so that opinion holds that it's even deraisa today. So that seems to be the two ways of learning the Gemara. The Rambam's opinion is Sefras HaOmer is deraisa today, and the Rov Rishonim say it's only D'Rabbanan today. And in fact, the problem is, and the issue seems to be, if Sefras HaOmer is an independent mitzvah, so then it's deraisa. So Pashas the Rambam Shita is that Sefras HaOmer is independent mitzvah, and it's therefore a mitzvah min HaTorah. According to Rov Rishonim, who say it's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, they must hold that the Sefras HaOmer is linked to the Karban Omer. That would fit in very well in theory. The only problem is we could bring a geographical proof from the Rambam. The Rambam puts halach in Hilchos Karbanos. If he puts it in Hilchos Karbanos, he's showing a link between Karbanos and Svira. If he's showing a link between Svira and Karbanos, that means Svira is connected to the Karban Omer. Since we don't have a Karban Omer today, that should make Svira D'Rabbanan. So how could the Rambam paskin that Sefras HaOmer is connected to the Karban at the same time hold Svira is deraisa? So there's a famous Rav Chaim on this. So he quotes, what does Rashi write when Ameimar writes Zeicher L'Mikdash? Hai minyan d'hashta lav chol b'hi. It's not an obligation. D'aleka Omer ela Zeicher L'Mikdash b'yamahu, and therefore b'yom sageh. So the simple reading is from the Gemara is that Af Abayi v'Rabbanan devei Ravashi D'mani Yomei Yishrei Nami Svira L'Hud Zeicher L'Mikdash B'Amad. The simple reading of the Gemara is, as we said, everyone agrees it's a Zeicher L'Mikdash. It's how much of a Zeicher? It's enough just to count days, or you have to count days and weeks. V'im Kain Kasho, how could the Rambam paskin against the Gemara? Which Pashas is Svira is not min HaTorah, and the Rambam paskins it is. So Vanira B'das Rambam, so Rav Chaim suggests the following. It's from the reading from the Haggadah Shel Pesach Beis Halevi Brisk. Vanira B'das Rambam Inei Mashakasav Rashi Dahashel Chavahu Lech Omer. That which Rashi says that it's not an obligation today because there is no Karban Omer. Al Kain Ein Kavanaso. It's not pshat that he's saying physically that since you can't bring an omer, therefore there's no obligation to count Sfira in the Torah, because it's not connected in the physical bringing. How do I know? Because when do we count Sfira? Balayla, well before you brought the omer. But what did you do in the base of Mikdash was up? It was Kavana Savid, the cave in the Hashta, Leker Klau Hadin Shel Hakrabas HaOmer, since there was no din of Hakrabas HaOmer, V'hainu Mishum Shah Mikdash Charif. So the Gemara is saying is that we see it's not dependent on the physical bringing of the Karban Omer because the Karban Omer was brought the next day. So it must mean you counted with the thinking that you're going to bring a Karban tomorrow. So the way the learning Rashi is that since we know there is no Karban today, so therefore, because the Beis HaMikdash is Charev, therefore, Gam Bala Gam Mitzvah Sfira. However, that's the Gemara. However, that's true. That's what the Gemara Menachos is saying. But Rav Chaim says this issue is a machlokas hasugyas. But there's a machlokas in many places with the Gemara Menachos is going according to the opinion that Kevin the Charav HaMikdash Bato Din HaKravas HaOmer Umeila Bala Gamke Mitzvah Sfira. The Gemara is assuming there is no longer any Kedushas HaMikdash, you can't bring a Karban, and therefore there's no Mitzvah Sfira. However, Rav Chaim points out about Lomanda Amar, the Kitchel Yasud level that the way the Rambam paskins, Hashchina Eino Bato, you might be able to destroy the temple, but the divine presence you can't take out, and therefore the Rambam Pasuk Behilchos Beis HaBechira the Kedushas HaMikdash Kidsho Asid Lavo Laficha U'Makrivin HaKarbanas Kulan Ava Bisha Ein Sham Bayis. But even though you can bring Karbanas, even though the Beis HaMikdash isn't built, Nimsa Shedin HaKravas Gomer Lo Bato Lo Pala Bizman Azad Mitzvah Sfira Min HaTorah. So basically it goes like this, that the Biataka, the Rambam says Sefras HaOmer is min Torah, and at the same time say that Sfira, how could the Rambam say that Sfira is min Torah, at the same time say it's linked to Karbanos? So Rav Chaim answers because the link isn't based on the physical bringing. I counted last night on the condition, on the potential that I will bring the Karban tomorrow morning. That's what I'm doing this year also. The fact when it comes to the morning I can't bring a Karban Omer, that's a technical issue, not a fundamental issue. Fundamentally you can bring a Karban. So therefore, the Gemara Menachos is going to the opinion Kedushas HaMikdash is Betela. According to the Rambam is working with the opinion, and that's what he passes, that Kedushas HaMikdash still applies. And that's the whole issue in terms of, one of the issues about walking on top of the Temple Mount. If the Beis HaMikdash B'Churbano has Kedushas HaMikdash, then it'd be also to walk in certain places. But if the Beis HaMikdash doesn't have any Kedusha, because it's B'Churbano, I don't know if anyone says it's exactly the same as any place, but it's lacking in the Churban, it's lacking in the Kedusha, so therefore would come out, that perhaps won't be permitted. That seems to be Pashas. We assume you don't walk up to the certain places if you know the exact, but I think the Meiri writes in certain times people walked up because they were assuming, so whether you could go up or not, that depends on whether it is Kedushas HaMikdash or not. We assume there is, and that's why the minig is not to go on the Makam HaMikdash. So we have a machlokas in the Gemara whether you count days or weeks. The Pashas HaGemara is, everyone agrees it's Rabbanan. It's just a question of how much of a Zeicha you need. However, the Rambam writes, Sefras HaOmer, even Bismana says, D'oraisa, so how does he learn the Gemara? So the Ran writes, he probably learns it, that that's goof in the Machlokas. That the one who says, Abaye, Rabbanan Debei Ravashi, Paul Gal Meimar, this Machlokas in the Gemara Menachos, is this issue. If it's the rice of Rabbanan, that depends if you count days and weeks or not. The one who says you count days and weeks holds the rice, the one who says you only count days holds the Rabbanan. That's very nice, but according to the Rambam, it's the rice and connected to the Karban, because the Rambam holds Kedushas HaMikdash. That Gemara is going not only but the Hilchasa, it's going that Kedushas HaMikdash is destroyed, and hence there's no Karban, there's no Sphere in HaTorah either. The Rambam's working with the other Gemaras that say Kedushas HaMikdash. There is Kedusha Makrivin Avabi She'engel Bayis, but you can bring a Karban even though the Bayis isn't up. And therefore, potentially, when you bring count the night of Pesach, potentially you're going to bring the Karban Omer tomorrow. And therefore, it still retains its Din D'oraisa today. So we'll have to, so that's the Bachlokas Rishonim with D'oraisa D'Rabbanan. We'll have to go into some nafkaminas. What's the practical difference? Either way, I'm going to have to count three. We have to come up with some nafkaminas, whether it's D'oraisa D'Rabbanan. As well, and we'll go into a third sheet of Rabbeinu Yerucham, who perhaps makes a distinction between days and weeks. So we'll continue next time. We'll continue our discussion on Sefras HaOmer. So we mentioned last time there's a major dispute among the commentators of Machlokas Rishonim on whether Sefras HaOmer Bizman Hazeh is a mitzvah min HaTorah or a mitzvah min HaTorah. Everyone agrees when the temple was standing, Bizban Beis HaMikdash Kayam, Sefras HaOmer was a mitzvah min HaTorah. The question was, Bizman Hazeh, when we no longer have a temple, does it retain its biblical character? So the Pashas HaGemara in Menachos is what it does, that the Machlokas in the Gemara among the Amoram is how much of his Gemara calls Sefras HaOmer Zeicha L'Mikdash. We're doing it to remember the good old days. And the question is how much of it, everyone agrees it's a Zeicha L'Mikdash, everyone agrees it's only D'Rabbanan. The Machlokas in the Gemara, whether you count Yomei Vishvue, days and weeks, or Yomei V'lo Shvue. But everyone, the Pashas HaGemara, everyone agrees that the way Rashi learns that it's a Din D'Rabbanan, that we don't have an Omer today, we don't have the Karban Omer, hence Sefras HaOmer is only D'Rabbanan. And the Rambam in Hilchos Tevidim L'Safim writes, Bizman Hazeh, Sefras HaOmer is D'oraisa, which seems to go against the Gemara in Menachos, so either some Rishonim learn it, that no, that's good for the Machlokas in the Gemara. The Gemara, which has one opinion saying you count days and weeks, that's the sheet that holds like the Rambam, or what the Rambam holds like it's D'oraisa. It's biblical. And the sheet that it says only counting days and not weeks, that's working with the dinim, with the sphere is only D'Rabbanan. And that's good for the Machlokas in the Gemara, whether it's D'oraisa D'Rabbanan. So Pashas, we said the issue is whether the sphere is connected to the Karban or not. The one who holds it D'oraisa seems to say it's an independent mitzvah, and since we don't have a Karban Omer, it still retains its biblical character. Another Rishonim all know they're connected. The only problem we pointed out was the Rambam holds it D'oraisa. Pashas should hold that it's not connected to the Karban, yet he writes the Lachas of Sefras HaOmer in Hilchos Karbanos, Tamidim and Musafim. So that's the famous Rav Chaim that no, the Gemara in Menachos is not going to leave it the Hilchasa, it's only going according to the opinion that there is no Kedushas HaMikdash today. But the Rambam goes with the other Rishonim, the other Gemaras that say there is Kedushas HaMikdash today, and therefore Sphere is connected to the Karban, and it's still the right, because in theory one can bring a Karban Omer. Technically, practically speaking, we don't, but we count the first night of Pesach on the condition we're going to bring a Karban tomorrow, even though we don't actually bring the Karban. And that's what the Reb Chaim points out, that even when they did bring a carbon over, they counted Sefira first, so we see it's not physically connected to carbon Omer, but as long as you count Sefira, then I would potentially bring the carbon, that's a din d'oraisa. So that was the Machokas Rishonim, that's where we left off. So there's a third opinion as well. There's the opinion of Rabbeinu Yerucham. He writes that, number one, there's 2 points. Number one is, the Torah gives us a pasuk regarding Tisbru Chamish Yom. There's a mitzvah of counting days, and there's a mitzvah of Shiva Shavuos. There's a mitzvah of counting 7 weeks. So whether Yod is Daraisa D'Rabbanan, all the Rishonim we've mentioned connected to either both the Rabbanan days and weeks are both rabbinical, or both days and weeks are biblical. There is no distinction. Comes along Rabbeinu Yerucham and says no, there's a distinction between days and weeks. Counting days is biblical, counting weeks is rabbinical, and he wants to learn it based on the psukim. The psukim by the weeks seem to connect him more to the karban, while counting the days seems to be independent. Whatever the svara is, that's what Rabbeinu Yerucham writes. In fact, Rabbeinu Yerucham writes that Bizman Beis HaMikdash Chayim, when Sefira was Daraisa, we used to make 2 brachas. We made a bracha on the days and a days on the week. We made a bracha on the days and a bracha on the weeks. But Bizman Hazeh, when counting weeks is only a Zeichel HaMikdash, so again it gets in, so we only make a bracha, we make 1 bracha on both. It's a question, even if it's true that counting weeks is D'Rabbanan, we make brachas on Manat Tikkun D'Rabbanan Tikkun D'Rabbanan Ke'ein D'Oraisa. You formulate it after the din d'oraisa. Either way, maybe the certain Seichel HaMikdash you do make, certain you don't, like the Korech. So either way, that's a separate discussion. But Rabbeinu Yerucham's opinion is days are biblical, weeks are rabbinical. And so perhaps, according to Rabbeinu Yerucham, the days and weeks are separate mitzvahs. That's what the Beis HaLevi paskins, that let's say you forget day 4 or 5, so that's it, you can't count day 6 with a bracha, but 7, 14, 21, 28, etc., that you can count, because if you choshesh Rashitas Rabbeinu Yerucham, or whether it's a kul or a chumrah, depending how you look at it, you can make a bracha on weeks, but that's what the Beis HaLevi writes. But more to the point, of Rav Pesach Frank writes in the Mikrai Kodesh, that's the reason why Sfardim break up the count. We count, today is the 11th day, which is 7 days, which is a week and 4 days of Omer. We say Omer at the end. While the Sfardim say today is the 7th, today is the 11th day of the Omer, which is a week and 4 days. They put Omer in between the days and the weeks. Why is that? So Rabbi Pesach writes, because we want to show the distinction between a fulfillment of a biblical mitzvah and a fulfillment of the rabbinical mitzvah. The biblical mitzvah, and so you say, well, Omer, you want to have a clear demarcation. And similarly we find we have another mitzvah, Birchas Hamazon, which is a biblical mitzvah, and we assume the first 3 brachas, the number 1 from Moshe Rabbeinu, 2 Yoshua, 3 David and Shlomo are biblical, and the 4th bracha is on a Rugi Beisa, it's only rabbinical. So that's why some Rishonim point out, we end the 3rd bracha, something we usually don't do. We say, Bona Brachamav Yushalayim Amen. We're answering Amen to our own bracha. So therefore, we point out that to break up the biblical mitzvahs into rabbinical. That's what Rav Pesach Frank writes here. We want to show a distinction between the biblical mitzvah and the rabbinical mitzvah. So we go ahead and we say Omer in between, us meaning Svardim. So we have 3 shitas in the Rishonim. We have the Rambam that Sefras HaOmer is Daraisa today, even today. And we have Rov Rishonim that Sefras HaOmer is only D'Rabbanan today, and we had Rabbeinu Yerucham who makes the distinction between days and weeks. So it's always my nafkamina. What's the practical difference if I say Sefras HaOmer is a biblical mitzvah, a rabbinical mitzvah? Either way, come nightfall, I'm gonna go count Sefira. So what's the difference if I say Sefras HaOmer is D'Oraisa D'Rabbanan? So the first nafkamina would be is, when is the Zman, when is the earliest time I could count Sefira? So we know in general, up until sunset is considered Vadayom, it's still considered day. When the 3 stars come out, it's considered nightfall. And the time period in between sunset and nightfall, that's Ben Hashmashos. That's the twilight, the intermediate time. So that's Safek Yom, Safek Layla. So the question is, no, it's actually 2 questions. Number 1 is, can I lichatchila count Sefira during this time period? And 2, even if the answer is yes, so there is no part 2, but if the answer is no, what about B'di'ev if I do count? In other words, if I say, is the preferable time to count during Ben Hashmashos is one question, and the second question is, can I count at all but during Ben Hashmashos? So, in fact, Tosfos writes that it's even better for Tamimis. It's better for Tamimis that you should count as early. The earliest time in the night is better. I think there's a sheet in Tosfos you should count at Shkia, at sunset, to make the Tamimis. But we normally assume the Mechaber brings down nightfall. So what's this issue? So the issue is, this seems to be revolve around this Machokas Rambam and the Bali Tosfos on whether Sefira of Zman Hazeh is D'Oraisa D'Rabbanan. Because we know we have a general principle, Savek D'Oraisa L'Chumra, doubt regarding a biblical law we're strict on, Savek D'Rabbanan L'Kula, doubt regarding a rabbinical law we're lenient on. So the question is, so if Sefras HaOmer is D'Oraisa like the Rambam, so Savek D'Oraisa L'Chumra, you have to wait until nightfall. That seems the way the Mechaber is working. One should wait until nightfall. However, according to the Bali Tosfos, if Sefras HaOmer is only D'Rabbanan, so Savek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. If one counted during that time period, one can be Yotzei. And that's the way we ask, and Rov Rishonim holds Sefira D'Rabbanan, and we assume that B'di'ev, if one counted during Ben Hashmashos, he fulfills his mitzvah of Sefira. And anyway, you can't hurt, and if you want, you could always repeat later without a bracha. So that's the question. So everyone seems to agree. Well, the poskim seem to agree. If you count during Ben Hashmashos, it counts. However, what's the question? It seems to be a Machokas Rishonim whether lechatchila I could count. Everyone, or I wouldn't say everyone, but we pass, and if you b'di'ev post facto, if you counted during Ben Hashmashos, you yotzei. The question is, can I lechatchila count during that time period? That seems to be a Machokas Rishonim. Some Rishonim mashma then even lechatchila, and others say no. Pash, halacha, we try to wait if we can. But what's in the Nekudas HaMachokas? The issue is, what's the pshat when we say Savek D'Rabbanan L'Kula? Or we have a principle of Svek Sveka, or Savek D'Oraisa L'Chumra. Is this B'Torah's Vada? Is this Torah Saf? When we paskin, so for instance, let's say you go to a supermarket, to the kosher meat section, or you go to a butcher, and they have a 50% off sale, and you look at the plastic, you look at the meat, it says, this meat is Safek D'Oraisa. This meat is doubtful treif. So what could you do? You're hungry, you're feeling lucky, and you go ahead and take this meat, you barbecue it, and you have a meal. And then you start feeling guilty about it, etc. Hopefully do tshuva on it. And then after 120 years, you go up to Beis in Shamala, and you can't wait. And you ask the angel, you know what, on that date, was that actually kosher meat? That 50% offset, was that kosher meat or treif meat? So the angel said, your lucky day, it was kosher. Oh, great, so you're feeling great because you ate kosher. You get up to Beis, you go see God in Beis in Shamala. They have the scales working, and he takes the piece of meat and puts it on the Avera side. So you say, what are you talking about? The angel told me it was kosher. No, you don't get it. You're right. Physically speaking, it was kosher. But once halacha says savek daraisa l'chumra, that's b'torah's vadai. That's the halacha. So it's the halachic reality that counts. And therefore you still violate a biblical prohibition. Once it says savek daraisa l'chumra, we're telling you b'torah's vadai. And similarly then, when you say savek drabanan l'kula, so let's say you had treif drabanan, and the halacha says I could eat it. So I can eat it b'torah's vadai, or it's a similar discussion like svek sveika, double doubt, is it percentages, probabilities, or we're saying once the halacha says svek sveika is mutas, you could, it's totally 100% b'torah's vadai. So this could be the issue here by savek rabbanan l'kula. So the shita that says savek rabbanan l'kula, you could count during that time holds that's b'torah's vadai. And perhaps the other ones who say, no, it's not really b'torah's vadai, it's b'torah's rov, it's only the majority, or it's, you know, it's only a doubt. So therefore, Savik Rabbanan L'Kula is only telling me b'di'evet, not l'chatzila. That seems to, so alach l'maisa, if you count during Ben Nishmas as you yotze. However, if you could wait to nightfall, then you could be yotze l'chol hashita. Of course, if you're davening in a shul where they daven during Ben Hashmashas and you're concerned where you might forget it completely, so then go ahead and count Sefira right away. If you remember, you could count again without a bracha. So that's the most common nafkamina is when is the earliest time to daven? What's the earliest time to say Sefira? Another nafkamina, whether Sefras HaOmer is daraisa drabanan, that could be dependent on the issue. People bring down that one should not tell you, like I shouldn't say tonight is 11, I should say yesterday was 10. What's that all about? Is there any basis to it? Is it Jewish folklore? What's the issue on whether I could say the date? Again, and that being said, posts can bring out anyway. The issue is more for the first 6 days, for 7 days. Now that, so even though I'm Yotze, let's say if tonight, like this said, today is the 11th day without saying a week and 4 days, b'di'evet I'm Yotze. But so therefore, even if I said to my friend, today's 11, so it's clear you didn't have kavanah, it's nicker, it's recognizable, you don't have kavanah, so it's not an issue. But the issue is about the first couple of days. So that depends on whether Sefras HaOmer is a din d'Rabbanan or a din d'Oraisa to Bizman Hazeh. So we have a klal in the Gemara, and Machoket in the Gemara, whether mitzvahs striches kavanah or not, whether mitzvahs require intent. So we paskin on a mitzvah min Torah, mitzvahs striches kavanah. On a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, mitzvahs ein striches kavanah. So actually it comes out, if you hold like the Rambam, that Sefras HaOmer is ma'azer, is daraisa, and we paskin mitzvah require intent, then you can tell your friend all night long about the date. As long as you don't have a mind to fulfill the mitzvah, you could go ahead and count with the bracha. However, according to those Rishonim will say it's Rabbanan, so then you can be Yotze, and that's why I want to point out it seems to be a steer in the Mechaber. Because the Mechaber here writes that you shouldn't say to your friend, what day, you should say yesterday's date. Mashma, that mitzvahs ain't trichas kavana. Yet, when it comes to Hilchas Kriya Shema and Siman Samach, he writes mitzvahs trichas kavana. So how do you reconcile the machaber? So someone answers, no kasha. That's the principle here. Mitzvahs Kriya Shema is a mitzvah min Torah, and therefore mitzvahs trichas kavana. Apparently the machaber is not passing like the Rambam, and Sefras HaOmer is only a mitzvah midrabanan. On a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, we say mitzvahs ain't trichas kavana, and therefore you could be yotze even without the requisite kavana. Hence, one should be careful not to say the day. One should say yesterday's date or tomorrow's date. And also, it's a discussion, the rights of d'Rabbanan, about if you're in the middle of a meal and the mitzvah of svira, you have to stop. So on a mitzvah in the Torah, again, we'll get into it. The Gemara and Sukkah we're usually posting be'emsa, and we do the mitzvah min Torah. But the mitzvah midrabanan, we're not posting. So that'd be another nafkamina in the middle of the meal, and the Zman Svira comes when you have to stop the meal and count Svira, or could you wait till the end of the meal? If it's D'Oraisa, so you stop the meal. If it's D'Rabbanan, you do it right away. We have to continue next time with some more practical differences between whether Svira is D'Oraisa or D'Rabbanan, and we'll touch on other issues, such as whether the issue of women counting Svira. We'll discuss the topic of Nashim B'Sefras HaOmer, woman's obligation, woman's participation in the mitzvah of Sefras HaOmer. Number one, are they obligated to count? And two, if they are not obligated, are they allowed to count? Or is it recommended that they count? So, in general, at first glance, Sefras HaOmer seems to be a classical example of a mitzvah aseh shehazman grama, a time-oriented mitzvah. And we know the rule is a woman are exempt from mitzvah aseh shehazman grama. So one would conclude that women are patur from Sefras HaOmer. There is a shita the Rishonim that says, and that seems to be the opinion of the Rambam, Maimonides. There is a shita, could be of the Ramban, who says that Sefras HaOmer is a mitzvah aseh shalav zman grama. And it's a whole shtickle Torah on that. But if you hold it the non-time oriented mitzvah, then a woman would be chayiv. But we assume it's a mitzvah aseh shazman grama, like the Rambam, and women are paturos. So the question is, are they permitted to count? They're definitely exempt. That's a general machlokas in the Rishonim. In general, can a woman volunteer a mitzvah aseh shazman grama? Can a woman volunteer a time-oriented mitzvah? So according to one opinion, the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, it's paltos if you violate a biblical prohibition of adding to the Torah. We don't pass in that way. We assume it's praiseworthy. A woman can volunteer to do a mitzvah aseh shazman grama. A woman can volunteer to do a mitzvah. So the question is, when she volunteers, can she also make a bracha or not? So the Rambam's opinion is no. The Balitos assume, Rabbeinu Tam assume yes. What is in the Kudas HaMachlokas? What's the issue whether you can make a bracha or not? So the issue with the bracha is because we say Vitzivanu, Asher Kedesharo B'mitzvosa Vitzivanu. We are saying, God, you commanded us to do the mitzvahs. And since women are not commanded, therefore they don't do a mitzvah, they don't make a bracha on a mitzvah aseh shazman grama. And B'nai Ashkenaz, we assume Vitzivanu is not going on you personally, it's going on the generic Vitzivanu, and therefore one's permitted to make a bracha. So that's a general issue in terms of making a bracha on a mitzvah aseh shazman grama. So the minhag of Sfardim is to do the mitzvah without a bracha. And the minhag Ashkenaz is to do the mitzvah with a bracha. So it come out then according to the Sephardim, then perhaps they should count without a bracha. But the minhag Ashkenaz is to count with a bracha. So that's the rule, but there are some exceptions to the rule on both sides. According to the Machaber, according to Rabbi Yosef Cairo, who normally exempts women from something they're not obligated in, the question is, the Machaber writes, Nashim Chayavas B'Birkas HaTorah. Women are obligated in the mitzvah of making the bracha before learning, not the bracha before an aliyah for the Torah, but a bracha before you start learning. Women are pater from Talmud Torah, so why does the Machaber say the Chayiv? Why are they obligated? So, the Achorim answer that perhaps different answers, but one is that women are chayiv in learning the parts that they're obligated in. They have to know how to keep Shabbos. They know how to keep. They have to know how to keep kosher. So therefore, that's why they're chayiv in a bracha. That's an exception to the rule for the Machaber. The Machaber usually says women don't have to make brachas. He agrees by Birkas HaTorah, even though they're exempt from Torah. Or perhaps, that could be part of the discussion, what the nature of the mitzvah, why are you making a Birkas HaTorah. But either way, the Machaber says women are chayiv. An exception according to the Rama's opinion is that women are obligated in, not obligated, but women can have the option of making a bracha on a mitzvah saseh as ba'graba. So what about Havdalah? Havdalah, the Rama writes, it's best that a woman should hear Havdalah from a man. She should make her own Havdalah. Because I understand, according to the Machaber, that you don't make a bracha. But why can't a woman make a bracha? Even if you assume it's... The question is a woman... Because one question is, which it touches on, a woman obligated in the mitzvah Havdalah. So, that's a major machlokas Rishonim. That the Rambam writes, there's a mitzvah remembering Shabbos with the praise of Shabbos, bechnisaso in its entrance, ubiyisiaso and in its exit. So according to the Rambam, the same source for Kiddush is the same source for Havdalah. And since everyone agrees Kiddush is Minat Torah, so too the Rambam says Havdalah is Minat Torah. So according to the Rambam, the source of Havdalah is Minat Torah, is from Zachar. And just like women are chayiv in Kiddush, are chayiv in Havdalah. How do we know women are chayiv in Kiddush? It's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. That's what the Gemara tells us in brachas. Kol shayishnu b'shmira yeshnu b'zechira. Whoever's included in keeping Shabbos is included in the mitzvah of doing the positive commandment, and therefore, since women have to keep Shabbos, they also are obligated in Kiddush. This is how we find a similar drasha that, how do we know women are obligated in the mitzvah of matzah? So the Gemara makes a drasha, whoever's included in the prohibition of eating chametz, included in the positive mitzvah of eating matzah. So it's the same type of drasha by Kiddush and matzah. But the Rambam Shita is, Havdalah is Minat Torah. It's from Zachar Yom HaShabbos HaKadosh. One could argue it's also Minat Torah, but it's not based on Zachar. It's based on Lahavdil ben Tamei V'Atar, a pasuk in Parashat Shmini, and therefore the daf kavita would be is well, your woman would be chayiv according to the Rambam. Not only to the Raisa, but the source of Zachar, therefore women are chayiv in Kiddush. So, according to the Rambam, women are chayiv in Havdalah also. So why can't they? So according to the Rambam, Yechayev. But other Rishonim say women are exempt from Havdalah. So the question is, so what if they're exempt? The Ramah paskins, women can volunteer brachas on mitzvahs they're exempt from. On mitzvahs that say Shazman Grama, so why can't they volunteer? Why can't they volunteer and do Havdalah. So that's a major machlokas, the Magen Avraham and the Taz. The Magen Avraham writes because when do we say a woman can volunteer on a mitzvah saseh shezman grama to make a bracha? That's only if we're talking about where there's a mitzvah, there's a baisa mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to sit in the sukkah, shake the lulav, so then you can make a bracha. But if the whole mitzvah is the bracha itself, if the whole mitzvah is the bracha itself, so then Chazal never said to make up. So since Havdalah is just a bracha, Amaldu ben Koshachol, so therefore women can volunteer that. Like, kind of like the Magen Avram's discussion by Kiddush Halavana, that women shouldn't do it either because it's just merely a bracha. So that's the sheet of the Magen Avram. The Taz disagrees and says, no, it's Tarte L'Reus, it's a double negative. The one he passed in Sefras HaOmer is only D'Rabbanan, not D'Oraisa, so that would be a key factor. And therefore the Taz writes, when do we say women are obligated? That's only on a mitzvah min Torah. But a mitzvah midrabanan, it's a trade drabanan, it's man grama and drabanan, women are exempt. And therefore, this could be a nafkamina, whether we were discussing what is some practical difference whether the Sefras HaOmer is the rice or drabanan today. So according to the Taz, if it's Sefras HaOmer is the rice, so then women could still volunteer it. It's not like Havdalah. If you hold Sefras HaOmer is only drabanan like Havdalah, so it's about graba, so yeah, women would have to take part. So we discussed the obligation of women. If it's like the Ramban, it allows man grama, so women are chayav. If you assume like we do, like the Rambam, it's only his man grama, so the general practice is Ashkenaz volunteer brachas on mitzvah says man grama, and Sefras HaOmer pashtus is no different. Some reason maybe it is different because since Sefras HaOmer involves 49 days, and therefore you can turn that someone will not be able to count all 49 days. So that's what Rosh Shlomo Zalman seems to lean against it because they'll know when they're exempt, and therefore he claims that they count 10 days, not 11. So then it could perhaps it's kamat the first and a bracha of batalas. What about men? They have to come. They have no choice. That's not so simple. Other Achronim disagree and say no, it's not. Other people, it's not a bracha about Torah. The bracha is going on the Ma'aseh Mitzvah, and therefore it's not an issue. So that seems to be the minhag today, that many women continue counting today with the bracha. In fact, many women remember more than the men do. So therefore, those are some of the issues we'll have to continue. This is some of the issues on women's obligation in the midst of Sefras HaOmer. We'll discuss them in Yane Sefras HaOmer. Since we're in between the days of Pesach and Shavuos, we're on day 15 today. It's never too late to count. Whether it's too late to count for a bracha ever, that's a separate shir, maybe we'll get to at some point. But you could always count without a bracha. In fact, you might have an obligation to. So let's go back to the basics and discuss the mitzvah of Sefras HaOmer. Is it a mitzvah min haTorah or a mitzvah midrabanan? Is it a biblical commandment or a rabbinical commandment? So I know you're thinking, what's the question? You say it every night, assuming, which is a separate discussion with the Nod of Yehuda, whether you say the Hilani Muchan Uzuman, but you quote the pasuk in there, Svar Tamachem Mimacharas HaShabbos. It's a pasuk we're going to read soon in Parashas Emor, as well as psukim elsewhere. It's an explicit pasuk to count Sefira, so why would I even entertain the question that it's not a mitzvah min haTorah? And weeks also, Shiva Shavuos, you're saying, well, that's Rabbi Yerucham Shita we'll get to. So it's a major dispute among the Rishonim. The Rambam writes, Sefras HaOmer, even Bizman Hazeh, is a mitzvah min haTorah.
And Rov Rishon, the majority of the Rishonim say it's only D'Rabbanan. Why would they say that Sfira is only D'Rabbanan today? So that touches on Gemara Menachas. The Gemara Menachas on Samak Vav Amad Aleph quotes a Machlokas, I think it's Ameimar and Ravashi. The Machlokas Amoram. How does one count Sfira Bizman Hazeh? So one opinion the Gemara says you count Yomei Vishvue, like we count today. There's a mitzvah today to count weeks, count days, and count weeks. And then it quotes the second opinion that says, no, the mitzvah today is only to count days and not weeks. Why, the Gemara asks? Because the Gemara says, because today it's only a Zecher Lamikdash. Today's Sfira is only a remembrance to the way it was done back in the good old days when we had the temple. So it's a machlokas in the Gemara whether you count days and weeks or just days. So the way Rov Rishonim learned the Gemara, the way the majority learned the Gemara is, everybody agrees today it's a Zeichel Mikdash. Everyone agrees counting Sfira is only Midrabanan today. The machlokas in the Gemara is, how much of a Zeichel do you need? Do I do it the same exact way it was done Bizman Beis HaMikdash Kayam? Or do I say no, that since it's only D'Rabbanan, so therefore there's no need to do the mitzvah the same exact way. If it's enough of a Zeicher, if I count days, I'll remember about Sefras HaOmer as well. That's the way most learn the Rishonim. Perhaps the Rambam will have to learn that's goof of the Machlokas. The Machlokas in the Gemara, only the opinion who says counting days, that's what the Gemara says it by. It quotes both opinions. At the end it says Zeichel HaMikdash. So the Rambam will learn that Zeichel HaMikdash is only going on the second opinion. That's the opinion in the Gemara who says you count days and weeks. They're like me. That's biblical. The opinion who says you only have to count days today, that's rabbinical. So that's the Gemara it's based on. What's the svara? What's the logic of the Rambam and the other Rishonim? So at first glance it seems to be dependent on the following. We know there's a mitzvah of Sefras HaOmer, but in addition there's a totally independent mitzvah. We'll have to see if it's independent or not. But there's another mitzvah of bringing the Karban Omer. On the second day of Pesach, in fact that was matir, the new produce, the chadash, the produce that was prohibited before. That's why the Jews, when they entered Eretz Yisrael, the pasuk in Yeshua tells us they couldn't eat matzah that year. They didn't eat matzah. Why can't they eat matzah? Because they didn't have any, all the produce was prohibited because it was chadash. It was the new produce that doesn't become permitted until they brought the Karban Omer. And that's a whole separate share. Why don't we say aseh docha lo saseh? Why don't we say the aseh of the mitzvah of matzah supersedes the prohibition of chadash? That's a separate discussion. But the bottom line is there's a separate mitzvah of Karban Omer, though they had another mitzvah of a Karban Omer. So the question is, the Karban Omer and the Sefras HaOmer are done at the same time, Sefras HaOmer period. So the question is, Rov Rishonim learn these two mitzvahs are connected. That the mitzvah of Sfira is connected to the mitzvah of Karban. That when you counted Sfira that night, you were on the condition you were bringing the Karban Omer the next day. So since Bizman Hazel we no longer have a Karban Omer, hence Sfira is no longer biblical, but it's only rabbinical. And that's why the Gemara, and that's the Pashtus HaGemara, it's only a Zeichel HaMikdash. And the Rambam apparently holds that Sfira and Karban are two different mitzvahs, either at the same time, same day. It's coincidental. Nothing's ever coincidental, but it's not inherent to the mitzvah. It's just telling me the Zman HaKarban, but it's not telling me some inherent link between the mitzvah of the Karban and Sfira. So that seems to be the machloket. We'll have to see. It's hard. We'll have to go into it another time, but it's hard to say this pshat in the Rambam, that to say, but the simple pshat is those who hold it's biblical is because the Karban Omer and the Sfira are independent. The problem with saying that in the Rambam is, where does the Rambam bring down this halacha? You can always bring a geographical proof from the Rambam. Where the Rambam quotes a halacha tells you about the nature of the halacha. And the Rambam could have brought down Sefras HaOmer in Hilchas Pesach, Hilchas Tefillah. He brings it down in Hilchas Karbanos, to Midin and Musafim. So the fact he brings it down in to Midin shows that he holds it is linked. So that's a separate share how could the Rambam still hold it's biblical, at the same time hold that it's still Minat Torah? But that's the Machlokas Rambam and Rov Rishonim. The Rambam, whatever the Svara is, holds it's biblical today. The majority opinion says it's only D'Rabbanan. There's actually a third opinion, and that's the opinion of Rabbeinu Yerucham. Rabbeinu Yerucham, one of the earlier commentators as well, he wants to make a distinction. See, according to the Rambam, there's no distinction between days and weeks. Whatever you say, days are, weeks are, it's just a matter, are they all biblical or all rabbinical? And that's what Rov Rishonim also. Tosfos makes no distinction between the mitzvah of days and weeks. Either they're both rabbinical or they're both biblical. Rabbeinu Yerucham wants to make a distinction. He says, counting days today is biblical, like the Rambam. Counting weeks today is only rabbinical. And what's it based on? Because he wants to claim based on the reading of the Psukim. He wants to say, if you look at the Psukim, counting of the weeks is connected to the Karbanos. Counting to the days is independent. So he wants to go with the same Svara, that weeks are connected to the Karban Omer. Hence, counting weeks is only rabbinical, because we don't have Karbanos today. But counting days is an independent mitzvah. So we have three opinions, whether Sefira today is all biblical, whether it's all rabbinical, or whether it's half and half. The days are biblical, and the weeks are only rabbinical. Who follows Rabbeinu Yerucham's opinion that we make a distinction between days and weeks? So that's the opinion of the Svardim. I don't mean the fake Svardim, Udav and Nusach Svard, and neither here or there. I'm talking about the real Svardim. Either you're going to be Ashkenaz or be a real Svard, but none of this in-between stuff. So, and by the way, there's some Ashkenaz Sidurim, whoever's looking in the back here. Getting back, so it goes like this.
Thank you any time for putting it back there.
So they point out that, how do the Svardim count? So how do we count? So we count today is the 15th day, which is 2 weeks and 1 day LaOmer. We say LaOmer at the end of Sefira. At the end of our count, that's when we say LaOmer. When do Svardim count? They say today is the 15th day LaOmer, which is 2 weeks and 1 day. They break up the count between days and weeks. So what do they do? Why is that count based on breaking up days and weeks? So that's a Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, one of the former chief rabbis in Jerusalem. He points out, because it's based on the opinion of Rabbeinu Yerucham. Rabbeinu Yerucham says counting days today is biblical, counting weeks today is rabbinical. In order to show a distinction, to make a clear demarcation between when you're fulfilling a biblical mitzvah and when you're performing a rabbinical mitzvah, so they say LaOmer in between. Where else do we find in the middle of one mitzvah, which has both aspects of biblical and rabbinical, and we break it up and we make a clear demarcation? That's the mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon. The mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon, the Gemara tells us in brachas, we know there are 4 brachas. Moshe instituted the bracha, the first bracha, Hazana Sakol, on the man that the Jews lived on for 40 years. Yoshua, for the Nodelacha, thanking God for Eretz Yisrael. Number 3, David and Shlomo building the temple. And number 4, Haruge Beitar, the miracle that happened, that the Jews who were killed and they weren't buried for a long time, their bodies did not rot away and they were able to be buried. So the Gemara tells us the first 3 blessings are biblical. The 4th blessing is rabbinical. That explains the strange thing we do. Some might think we do a lot of strange things, but the strange thing we do here is we end off Boneh Barachamav Yerushalayim Amen. Since when do we answer Amen to our own bracha? Usually we make a bracha and we wait for the tzibor to respond, or anyone to respond. Here we're answering Amen to our own bracha. Why is that? So the Rishonim explain is because we want to show this is the end of the unit. We finished our biblical commandment of benching, and now this 4th blessing is only rabbinical. What do you mean? Only rabbinical? That's what the Gemara gets into. Certain times, if you're working for someone, and so there are times where you have to, where they say you can only, obviously if you have to be working, you have to be working, but there are times where you're in the middle of doing something, so they get into a discussion. If you're finishing a biblical mitzvah, you could still do it, but a rabbinical mitzvah could get waived. So there'd be nafkaminas then in terms of, how much benching you'd have to do. Perhaps today it's not really Nogeya, maybe because we bench much quicker or people don't work today, whatever the issue might be. It doesn't seem another 30 seconds or another 10 seconds usually will make the difference there. But maybe today your bosses are okay with you benching. Whatever the details are, it's not really halacha maisa, but it is true that the first 3 brachas are biblical and the 4th is rabbinical, and that's why we end up boneh bracha b'shvayimami, and that's what the Svarim do. They say, well, Omer in between days and weeks. Interesting, the Beis Halevi also based his answer to the following question on this. We know there's a famous question, what do you do if you miss a complete day? So again, we'll get into that at another shir, but the simple understanding is if you miss a complete 24-hour period, so you continue counting the next day without a bracha. If you miss a complete day, you don't count with the bracha anymore. So what happens if you miss day 5? If you miss completely day 5, so day 6, you count without a bracha, but the Beis Halevi said when you get to day 7, 14, 21, 28, the units at the end of the week, he says now you can continue counting with the bracha, because he says, because there are different opinions, i.e. Rabbeinu Yerucham, who hold counting days and counting weeks are 2 different mitzvahs. The fact that you blew the day mitzvah doesn't mean you blew the week mitzvah, and therefore, even though you missed the counting during, so if you missed day 7, you can knock off both at the same time. But if you miss a day during the week, not the concluding of the week, the Beis Halevi would say you could continue making a bracha. We'll see, but Rav Salvation might even be more lenient of continuing with the bracha even when you miss a regular day of the week, because it comes down to there are different issues in terms of, well, see, Sefras HaOmer is one of the easiest mitzvahs to do, and it's one of the hardest mitzvahs to do. It's one of the easiest mitzvahs to do because it takes about 5 seconds, maybe 10, 15, or 3, depending on the person, but it takes a very short time to do. On the other hand, it lasts 7 weeks, so you have to remember 49 days in a row. That's a challenge. So therefore, the issue always is it 49 independent mitzvahs, or is it one big mitzvah? If it's one big mitzvah, so you miss one day of the 49, the mitzvah's over. You can't be a little bit pregnant. Either you're pregnant or you're not. So if it's one big mitzvah, either you did it or you don't do it. Whether I missed day 1 or day 49, it wouldn't make a difference. If I didn't do all 49 days, I'm not getting the mitzvah. But if I hold it's 49 separate mitzvahs, it wouldn't make a difference. If I missed the first 48 days, I could still do day. That's a major discussion among the Rishonim. There's a Shita, the Bahag, which all the Bahag says, if you miss a day, so you no longer count anymore. So people assume that the Bahag's opinion means that it's one big mitzvah, and therefore if you miss any day, you can no longer continue counting. Number one, the Bahag seems to be a minority view, and Bahag isn't necessarily someone we usually follow a halacha on a regular basis. And so we'll see that, and there's different ways of interpreting the Bahag to see in terms of whether one can continue. But the simple psak in the Shulchan Aruch is that if you miss a complete day, you continue counting without a bracha. But that's the Machaber is consistent. Rabbi Yosef Karo is consistent with his view in general. He's very strict on making brachas when they're in doubt, because also we know the Sephardi Shita by women when they volunteer a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. When the Sephardi women who sit in the sukkah, they can't make a bracha. Sephardi women who shake lulav, they do it without a bracha, because the Machaber goes with the Rambam Shita that if you do a bracha she'ena tzricha, a bracha l'batala, it's a potential violation of a biblical prohibition. So the Machaber Shita in general is any time there's a doubt, you don't want to go from the pan to the fire. Better not to make a bracha, because if you make a bracha and it wasn't warranted, you end up violating a biblical prohibition. It could be worse than not making a bracha is only a rabbinical violation at best. It is mavato a mitzvah aseh midrabanan. Making a bracha when you should make one could end up violating a biblical. That's the Machaber's opinion. That's why he's very strict in general. Any type of doubt. So that's the Machaber here also. That by Svira, that he says that once you miss a complete day, he's being choshesh for the shita of the Bahag, that maybe it's one big mitzvah, and therefore you don't continue. Perhaps Ashkenaz doesn't go as strong, and there's more room to work. That even if you forgot a day, even a complete day, you can rely on the other. That's why any type of doubt we are always lenient, because we could always make it like, if you're not sure if you counted yesterday. So if you're not sure if you counted yesterday, you could continue counting with a bracha. Why? Because we always could find a svek, a double doubt. One doubt is it one mitzvah 49? And even if it's one mitzvah, maybe you counted yesterday. So the poskim are always lenient when you could create some other suffix, because it's not so simple that we pass them like the Bahag anyway, and it's not so simple the Bahag says. So we'll have to continue our discussion on Sphere maybe tonight.